These are the Value Up student lessons created by Mike Donahue. That's me. That's me. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Value Up lessons. This is one of my favorite ones. It is on dating. I know it's going to be a little weird having an old white guy teach you how to date, but, there could be worse things in life, right? I could be talking about diarrhea right now, which I'm not going to. But I am talking about dating, and so let's get into this. First of all, what we have to understand is a hungry need is a dangerous need. I end up saying that a lot in schools because I think a lot of people date out of a hungry need. I'm going to get into that in a minute, but let me explain it. So when I was a youth pastor, a bunch of football players used to come to my youth group on Wednesday nights right from practice. They were hungry. So one night I decided to buy them all a pizza. They didn't know that because I put the pizza in the back. I took one pizza out, brought it up, and tried to auction it off. I auctioned it off. And they were hungry. So they paid $65. A bunch of guys got together, put their money together, paid $65 for the pizza. Obviously, I gave the money back. But the lesson that night was you paid too much for the pizza, right? You paid 65, I paid 12. That's way too much. The reason you paid that much was you were hungry. Thus, a hungry need is a dangerous need. And so that happens a lot like that. Like for me, when I talk in schools and I talk about the fact that that girl told me in the assembly after I was done, she looked over at me and said, I know the guy that I'm dating is using me. And I said, break up with him. And she said, I would rather hear I love you fake than not hear it at all. Well, that to me is an example of a hungry need. A hungry need says, I don't care if this guy's using me. I have this hungry need to be loved. I'm not getting it met the right way. So I am going to, put up with this stuff that this guy's put me through. And so that's dangerous, right? That's incredibly dangerous. So why are teenagers hungry for love? Why are teenagers hungry for love? Let's go through it, okay? New love is fun love. It's fun, right? When things seem stale and it's just exciting. All of a sudden somebody likes me. They like me. And we can get into that, right? It's like, you feel really cool. Somebody starts paying attention to you. You get text messages and whatever, and things, you get snapped. I don't know what that means because no one ever snapped me when I was growing up, but you guys get snapped and all of a sudden, woo, things get going, and it's exciting. It is. I'm making fun of it, but really it's exciting. And, new love gets really, intoxicating. So yeah. The second reason is adding someone who may like you may make you like yourself, right? That to me is an incredibly dangerous reason to date, right? When that hungry need for love is so strong that you're like, I don't like me. So if I add someone to me and they like me, maybe I'll like me. That means that person's going to end up being the center of your value. And that's never a good thing, right? We talk about that in the assemblies, in my book and stuff, that you have to have your own personal value. You have to know your value, and then you can add someone to that value. But if you're adding that person to bring value into your life, that's a recipe for getting used, right? Number 3, because we accept the love we think we deserve. We accept the love we think we deserve. It's from a movie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I don't usually like teenage movies because they make you guys look stupid, but this one's pretty good. Teacher's talking to the student. Student says to the teacher, why does my sister keep letting these guys use her? And the teacher comes back and says, because we accept the love we think we deserve. And to me, when you don't think you're valuable, when you are hungry for love, you accept any kind of love. You'll accept anything, right? If you're not, careful, you will accept love that is not worthy of you. And so I think that's really important to pay attention to. Quiz time, boys and girls. Okay, we talked about the fact that teenagers tend to date when they're hungry for love. Why is that dangerous? Why is it dangerous to date when you've got this hungry need for love? Number 1, we ignore red flags, right? things that we normally would like not put up with. We're like, oh, we're hungry for love. So yeah, this guy may be angry all the time, or he may be possessive or controlling, or she might be jealous of my friends, or she might be, always trying to control my life, whatever. But we put up with that because we got this hungry need to be loved. And so we can't ignore, red flags. Number two, it's too intense, too fast, right? You just, all of a sudden, there's this tons of energy going into this relationship, and you get possessive and controlling, and it's like, it's all about that, almost like tunnel vision, and all you can see is this relationship. All you think about, all you talk about is this relationship, and that just drains energy out of other things, including relationships, like some of your friendships. Yeah, number three, we don't take time to build the friendship first, right? The friendship is what's really important, right? It brings that connection piece, right? Like when you first get into the relationship, it's fast, like we talked about. And then, you have to settle down and really become friends and begin to know the other person and what they like, what they don't like, their family, all that pedigree stuff, right? Sometimes I'm asked by teenagers, like, when is it a good time to add, physical stuff? And I don't want to get into this big conversation about physical stuff and religion and everything like that. I just want to talk about this. Sometimes people add the physical part of a relationship because the connection piece isn't there anymore, right? Their friendship faded. Like, they're not building the relationship on the foundation of friendship, so they have to add something. So they end up adding the physical stuff, and it's supposed to be the thing that connects them. And maybe it does for that moment, but it really ends up becoming something that gets in the way, because the friendship is the basis, right? The friendship is what you're trying to build. And so my advice would be, again, not to be religious, but not to add the physical stuff to the relationship when it starts getting stale. Do some things in the relationship to make it more connecting, right? Do some things you haven't done before. Go on hikes together. Talk about things you maybe not have talked about before. Do some things in the relationship that are going to bring connection outside of the physical aspect of it. Number four, we isolate and ignore other important relationships when we're hungry for a relationship. It's dangerous because you're isolating people that could really help you when things get tough in that romantic relationship you're in, right? If you isolate your parents, you isolate your best friends, and it's just all about this person, and then things aren't going well, you could be in a pretty messed up situation. I'd say a huge red flag is when your partner won't respect your other relationships, right? Jealousy is not a compliment. It's control. They're trying to control you. It sounds like a compliment, right? I just want to be around you. I love you. It's us against the world. Nobody understands us like us. All that kind of stuff is really good talk for control. Like it comes off as I love you and it's just us, but it's really control. A good relationship, a healthy relationship, your partner should be wanting to get to know some of your friends, right? Wanting to know your family, wanting to be close to your mom, be close to your dad. Like, hey, here's who I am. If they're avoiding that and they're trying to get you away from that, huge red flag. That's control, and you need to pay attention to that. Quiz time, boys and girls. Boundaries. Really, really important that you set boundaries up in a relationship, because if you don't know what they are, if you're trying to figure them out in the middle of the relationship, they're going to get muffled, right? So you need to know ahead of time what's important to you before you walk into a relationship. Like, this is a highly emotional situation, right? I'm going to give myself to somebody. I'm going to be like vulnerable with people. I'm going to let that person be vulnerable. There's a lot going on here. So knowing what you're getting into ahead of time is really important. So number one, being self-aware, like knowing what you need. That's not a bad thing. That's not selfish to know what you need, right? So before you walk into the relationship, like, this is where I'm at with the physical stuff. This is where I'm at with the emotional stuff. this is where I'm at with my friendships and my parents, right? And the other things that are in my life that are important, schoolwork, where am I going in the future? Things like that. What am I willing to, kind of bend on? What am I willing not to? That's important that you know that before you get into the relationship. Expressing it to your partner is really important, right? Being able to talk about it in a way that makes sense. And it doesn't have to be all emotional. I know couples that have done this where they've had a contract, right? They put out a contract and they actually write down what some of their boundaries are when it comes to these certain things, like the emotional stuff, the physical stuff, the relational stuff, right? They sit down and go, we're going to have boundary night, right? And you sit and you talk about it. And I think it's really important that you do that, and however you express it to each other. But I would say don't do it in the middle of the game, right? When the stakes are high and there's emotions and all of a sudden someone crosses a boundary, and now you're having the conversation. You should have the conversation ahead of time, because that's just really smart. Also, negotiation, right? Sometimes, you're going to have to adjust things, right? You're going to have to come back and go, you know what, this was cool. This is not, especially in a young relationship, you're going to have a lot more stricter boundaries. Your boundaries are going to be strict. You're going to be like, okay, these are the things we do, don't do. Once you start liking each other, you know each other, you're starting to trust each other a little bit more, you can loosen up those boundaries a bit, right? So going back and negotiating them is really smart. What do you do when those boundaries keep getting crossed? This is really important, that you have a plan, right? That there's a certain line. And if that person keeps crossing that line after negotiation, after talking about it, they keep coming back and crossing those lines, probably going to have the tough conversation, right? The conversation where you're like, that's it. Like, I'm not going to keep doing this, right? We're done here. You keep crossing the line, and that's hard. I mean, let's face it, breaking up with somebody is incredibly hard, but it's probably a very important thing to do when those lines get crossed. Like, you can't keep convincing yourself they're going to get better. They'll say that too. Well, I'll get better, or I'll try harder, or it's your fault, or they'll gaslight you and make it all your fault, right? But inside when it's like it's done, when they just keep crossing that line, you have to be willing to say enough is enough and I'm done. Like I said, breaking up is hard to do. And so let me give you a couple of tips on what to do when that happens, because it's highly emotional and you can make a lot of irrational decisions when that happens. Big thing to do is stick to your convictions, right? There'll be a lot of emotion. That person may come back and be like, I promise I'll change. They bring flowers, a candy, whatever. But once you're done, you need to be done. And that's going to be tough, right? It is. It's going to be hard. But you have to be willing to stay true to what's important to you. And I would also say that reconnecting with relationships that are steady and solid in your life is really important, right? Maybe you and your mom, or you and your dad, kind of got a little, distant with this relationship because they didn't like it, or they saw some things they didn't like, or whatever. But you know what? Your parents love you. And so go back and, try to reconnect, because relationships really are all about connection. And so when that connection gets broken with this person that you were dating for a while, there is a void, definitely. And so instead of rushing back into another relationship that would be unhealthy, reconnect with some of the people that love you, care about you. Take some time, take a breath, reconnect, recalibrate, and go into your next relationship a lot more healthy. All right, so we got through it. Just talking about dating to teenagers from an old guy's perspective is a little weird, but I've dated around, my day when I was younger, and and really honestly, I've watched a lot of relationships because I was a youth pastor for a long time, and then obviously working with kids in schools. I get a lot of conversations after assemblies about relationships and how they got hurt and betrayed and things like that. And it's just so important that before you go into a relationship that you realize that, what is your hungry meter? What is your meter? Where are you at with needing to date? When anybody ever says to me that they need to date somebody, a red flag goes up, because I'm like, you're setting yourself up to get hurt and to get betrayed, because that hungry need is dangerous, right? You want to fill that hungry need by knowing your own value, right? My rule of thumb is know you, value you, and then you can add a relationship to your life. But if you're adding a relationship for you to like yourself, it's just too dangerous. It's too volatile. So I hope you've got a lot out of this lesson, and I will see you at the next one. Almost done with the year. Bye.